Life is a journey, not a destination. Subtitle: Manifesting Money, Abundance, and the Person You Are Becoming. Introduction. Life is not a destination we arrive at one day, holding a perfect amount of money, success, love, and peace in our hands. Life is a journey, and every step we take shapes the person we are becoming. Many people spend their lives chasing money as if it were the final answer. They believe that once they have more, they will finally feel safe, worthy, powerful, or free. But money does not create the person. Money reveals the relationship we already have with ourselves. Manifesting money is not about sitting still and waiting for life to magically change. It is about becoming aligned with abundance. It is about healing the old stories that told you money was impossible, shameful, difficult, or reserved for other people. It is about learning to believe that you are allowed to receive, allowed to grow, and allowed to live a life that feels expansive. This book is not about chasing wealth from fear. It is about walking toward abundance with trust, clarity, gratitude, and action. Because life is a journey, not a destination. And money, when understood correctly, becomes more than paper, numbers, or possessions. It becomes a mirror. It shows you where you trust, where you doubt, where you give, where you resist, and where you are ready to expand. The journey begins with one simple decision. You are no longer available for a life built on limitation. Chapter 1. The beginning of the journey. Life is a journey, not a destination, and nowhere is this truth more visible than in the way we learn to understand money, success, freedom, and the quiet desire to become more than the version of ourselves we have been until now. For many people, money becomes the destination they chase with all their energy because they believe that once they reach a certain number in their bank account, once they own the right things, live in the right place, or are seen in a certain way by others, they will finally feel complete, safe, worthy, and free. But life rarely transforms us from the outside in, because even though money can open doors, create comfort, offer choices, and make certain parts of life easier, it cannot give us inner peace if we have never learned how to feel safe within ourselves. And it cannot create self-worth if deep inside we still believe that receiving more than survival is somehow not meant for us. The journey of manifesting money begins long before money appears in physical form, because it starts in the invisible places where our beliefs are formed, in the thoughts we repeat without questioning them, in the emotions we attach to receiving, spending, saving, asking, giving, and in the stories we inherited from families, cultures, and past experiences that taught us what money is supposed to mean. Maybe you were taught that money is hard to earn, that success belongs only to the lucky, that people with wealth are selfish, or that wanting more than what you already have is a sign of greed. And maybe these ideas were not taught to you through direct lessons, but through the tension in a room when bills arrived, through the silence around financial dreams, through the worry in someone's voice, or through the sacrifices you watched people make just to keep life moving. Without realizing it, you may have carried beliefs that were never truly yours, and because these beliefs lived quietly in the background of your mind for so long, they may have shaped the choices you made, the risks you avoided, the opportunities you did not feel ready to receive, and the level of abundance you believed was realistic for someone like you. This is why the journey begins not with a bank account, a business idea, a perfect opportunity, or a sudden miracle, but with one honest and powerful question that has the ability to open a new door inside you. What if money could be different for me? Not because you force life to change overnight, not because you pretend that fear does not exist, and not because you repeat beautiful words while avoiding practical responsibility, but because you become willing to build a new relationship with money, one that is based on awareness, trust, gratitude, discipline, and the quiet courage to receive more than you once thought was possible. True manifestation is not passive waiting, and it is not the fantasy of wanting something deeply enough that the universe does all the work for you. Instead, it is a partnership between belief and action, between the inner world you cultivate and the choices you make every day, between the vision you hold and the person you are willing to become in order to meet that vision. You do not attract abundance by pretending to be someone else, and you do not become wealthy in the deepest sense by rejecting who you have been, because real abundance begins when you become more honest about your value, more open to opportunities, more responsible with your energy, and more willing to act from possibility instead of fear. Money responds to value, and one of the most important steps on this journey is recognizing that your value did not begin the moment someone paid you, approved of you, hired you, supported you, or called you successful, because your value has always existed in your ideas, your energy, your experience, your resilience, your creativity, and the unique way you are able to contribute to the world around you. The world does not need you to become perfect before you receive more. It asks only that you become available for growth, available for opportunity, available for responsibility, and available for a new identity that no longer chooses survival as the highest expression of life. Many people say they want more money, yet deep inside they are afraid of what more money might require from them, because abundance often asks for more discipline, more clarity, more visibility, more courage, more responsibility, and a deeper level of trust than the life they have known until now. This is why abundance does not only ask, "What do you want?" but also asks, with quiet honesty, "Who are you willing to become in order to receive it?" The journey truly begins when you stop seeing money as something far away from you, something reserved only for certain people, something that belongs to those who were born luckier, smarter, more connected, or more deserving, and instead begin to see it as a tool, a resource, and a form of exchange that can move through your life when you create value, respect its purpose, and allow yourself to participate in its flow. Money is energy in motion, and although this idea may sound simple, it can change the way you relate to every financial choice you make, because when you fear money, shame it, resent it, or place it above your own worth, you create resistance, while when you respect it, direct it with intention, and use it as a servant rather than a master, you create space for it to support your expansion. This does not mean that your path will always be easy, or that challenges will disappear the moment you decide to think differently, because every meaningful journey includes uncertainty, patience, discomfort, and days when your outer reality seems slow to reflect the changes happening inside you. Yet every powerful transformation begins before the evidence appears, just as a seed begins its life beneath the surface, growing roots in silence long before anyone can see proof of what it is becoming. Your abundance may begin in the same quiet way, first as a new thought, then as a different choice, then as a stronger habit, then as a clearer opportunity, and eventually as a life that begins to reflect the person you have been becoming all along. This is why life is a journey, not a destination, because the goal is not simply to receive more money, but to become someone who no longer lives from fear, someone who trusts their own path, someone who understands that abundance is not only about having more, but also about becoming more aware, more grateful, more courageous, more responsible, and more aligned with the life they truly want to live. Today, you do not need to have every answer, every plan, every resource, or every sign that things will work out exactly as you hope. Because the first step is not about certainty. It is about willingness. Begin by noticing the thoughts you repeat about money, by questioning the beliefs that make you feel small, by choosing words that support your growth instead of reinforcing your fear, and by allowing yourself to imagine that your financial reality can change without you having to abandon who you are. You can begin with simple inner statements that feel honest enough to believe and powerful enough to open a new direction within you. Money is allowed to come to me in healthy and meaningful ways. I am willing to learn a new relationship with receiving, managing, and growing money. I am open to opportunities that match my value, my energy, and my becoming. I do not chase abundance from fear. I walk toward it with trust, clarity, and action. My life is expanding one step at a time, and I am allowed to grow with it. This journey will not ask you to become someone false, artificial, or disconnected from your truth. Instead, it will ask you to return to the powerful version of yourself that fear, doubt, limitation, and past conditioning may have hidden for too long. And as you take the first step into this new relationship with life, money, and yourself, remember that you are not behind, you are not too late, and you are not unworthy, because you are simply standing at the beginning of a journey that has the power to transform not only what you receive, but who you believe you are allowed to become. The destination may inspire you, but the journey will transform you. Chapter 2. Your relationship with money. Before money can become something you attract, grow, manage, and use with confidence, it must first become something you are willing to understand, because your relationship with money is not only shaped by what you earn or what you own, but by what you believe money means about safety, love, freedom, power, worth, and possibility. Most people think their financial life is built only from numbers, decisions, jobs, opportunities, and circumstances. Yet beneath all of those visible details lives a quiet emotional relationship with money that influences the way they receive it, spend it, save it, ask for it, fear it, judge it, and sometimes push it away without realizing they are doing so. If money has always felt stressful to you, it may not be because money itself is the enemy, but because your nervous system learned to connect money with pressure, conflict, uncertainty, guilt, or the fear of not having enough. If money has always felt distant, it may be because somewhere along the way you learned to believe that abundance belongs to other people, while your life must remain smaller, more limited, or more difficult. If receiving money feels uncomfortable, even when you have worked for it or deserve it, it may be because a part of you still believes that wanting more makes you selfish, that being paid well requires proving yourself endlessly, or that life will punish you for rising beyond the identity you once accepted. Your relationship with money began long before you understood what money truly was, because as a child, you may have watched the adults around you speak about bills, work, debt, success, lack, sacrifice, and survival in ways that taught you whether money was something peaceful or dangerous, available or rare, empowering or heavy. You may have learned about money through words, but you also learned through silence, through facial expressions, through arguments behind closed doors, through dreams that were postponed, through opportunities that were refused, and through the emotional atmosphere that appeared whenever the subject of money entered the room. This is why healing your relationship with money is not simply about repeating affirmations or imagining a better future. Although both can be meaningful tools, it is about becoming aware of the invisible emotional patterns that have been guiding your financial choices, so you can finally decide which beliefs still belong to you and which ones you are ready to release. Money is a mirror, and although it does not define your worth, it often reveals the places where you have forgotten it because the way you handle money can show you where you trust yourself, where you doubt yourself, where you feel powerful, where you feel ashamed, where you give from love, and where you give from fear. Some people spend money the moment they receive it, because deep down they do not feel safe holding more, while others hold money so tightly that they never allow themselves to enjoy the life they are working so hard to build. Some people undercharge because they are afraid of being rejected, while others overwork because they believe exhaustion is the only path to being worthy of reward. Some people dream of abundance, but secretly feel guilty about having more than those around them. And because that guilt creates an inner conflict, they may sabotage opportunities before those opportunities have the chance to become real. To manifest money in a healthy and meaningful way, you must be willing to look at these patterns without judgment, because awareness is not punishment. It is the beginning of freedom. You are not wrong for having fears around money, and you are not weak because certain financial situations still activate old emotions, because every belief you carry was once formed as a way to understand life, protect yourself, belong to your environment, or make sense of what you saw. But there comes a moment in every journey when the beliefs that once protected you begin to limit you. And at that moment, you must decide whether you will continue living from inherited fear or begin creating a relationship with money that reflects the person you are becoming. A new relationship with money begins when you stop seeing it as something that controls you, saves you, judges you, or decides your value, and instead begin to see it as a tool that responds to clarity, responsibility, intention, creativity, and the value you are willing to bring into the world. Money is not meant to be worshipped, because when you place money above your peace, your character, your health, or your humanity, you turn it into a master instead of a resource. At the same time, money is not meant to be rejected, because when you shame money, resent people who have it, or pretend you do not need it while secretly feeling anxious without it, you create resistance towards something that can support your choices, protect your time, expand your opportunities, and help you contribute in more powerful ways. A healthy relationship with money lives somewhere between obsession and avoidance, where you respect money without fearing it, desire more without losing yourself, receive it without guilt, and use it in ways that reflect both wisdom and gratitude. This is where manifestation becomes deeper than wishing, because you cannot manifest a new financial reality while staying loyal to an old emotional identity that believes money is dangerous, difficult, shameful, or unavailable. You must begin to speak to money differently in your mind, not with desperation, not with resentment, and not with the energy of someone begging life to prove they are worthy, but with the calm authority of someone who is willing to learn, grow, receive, manage, and expand. Instead of saying, "Money never stays with me," you can begin to say, "I am learning how to hold money with wisdom and confidence." Instead of saying, "I am bad with money," you can begin to say, "I am becoming someone who understands money and makes clearer decisions every day." Instead of saying, "People like me do not become wealthy," you can begin to say, "My past does not decide the size of my future." These new statements are not meant to deny your current reality, because denial is not manifestation. They are meant to open a new relationship with possibility, so your thoughts, emotions, choices, and actions can begin moving in the same direction. When you change your relationship with money, you also change the energy you bring to opportunities, because a person who feels unworthy may hesitate to ask, negotiate, create, sell, invest, learn, or step forward. While a person who is healing their worth begins to understand that receiving is not taking from life, but participating in life. Receiving money for your work, your ideas, your service, your creativity, or your presence does not make you greedy, because money given in exchange for value is part of a natural cycle. And when that cycle is respected, both giving and receiving become expressions of trust. You are allowed to receive without apologizing for it. You are allowed to want more without being consumed by wanting. You are allowed to build wealth while remaining kind, generous, grounded, and deeply connected to what matters. As your relationship with money changes, you may notice that abundance is not only about how much comes in, but also about how consciously you relate to what is already in your hands. Because gratitude for what you have creates a different inner atmosphere than constant panic over what is missing. This does not mean you must pretend to be satisfied with a life that feels too small for your spirit, and it does not mean you should ignore real financial responsibilities, but it does mean that your future expands more naturally when you stop fighting your present with shame and begin meeting it with honesty, care, and intention. Look at your money with courage, even if the numbers are not yet what you want them to be, because avoidance keeps fear alive, while clarity gives you power. Notice what comes in. Notice what goes out. Notice what you value. Notice what you avoid. And notice the emotional story you tell yourself when you look at your financial reality. Because the moment you stop hiding from money is the moment you begin reclaiming your authority over it. This chapter is not asking you to become perfect with money overnight, and it is not asking you to erase every fear before you take your next step, because transformation does not happen by demanding perfection from yourself. It happens by practicing a new way of being until the new way becomes more familiar than the old one. Your relationship with money can become calmer. It can become wiser. It can become more loving, more responsible, and more abundant. And as this relationship changes, you may begin to understand that money was never only about money, because it was always connected to how much life you believed you were allowed to receive, how much space you believed you were allowed to take, and how much freedom you believed you were allowed to create. So today, instead of asking only, "How can I get more money?" ask yourself, "What kind of relationship with money am I ready to build?" Ask yourself where you learn to fear it, where you learn to chase it, where you learn to reject it, and where you are now ready to respect it as a tool that can support the person you are becoming. Because when your relationship with money begins to heal, you no longer approach abundance as someone standing outside of it, hoping to be chosen, but as someone who is learning to walk with it, understand it, welcome it, and use it with purpose. And perhaps this is one of the most important truths on the journey. Money does not need to become your destination in order to become part of your expansion. Because when you relate to it with awareness, gratitude, responsibility, and trust, it becomes not the meaning of your life, but one of the resources that helps you live that meaning more fully. Chapter 3. Money is energy. Money is energy in motion. And although it appears in the physical world as paper, coins, numbers, payments, salaries, prices, invoices, investments, and possessions, beneath all of these forms, it represents movement, exchange, intention, value, trust, and the choices people make about what they believe is worth giving, receiving, building, protecting, and expanding. When you begin to see money only as an object, it can become heavy, frightening, or distant, because you may start to believe that it has power over you, that it decides your worth, or that it belongs to a world you are trying to reach from the outside. But when you begin to see money as energy, you understand that it is always moving through relationships, ideas, work, service, creativity, courage, responsibility, and the willingness to participate in life with awareness. Money is not good or bad by itself, because it takes on the meaning, direction, and emotional weight that human beings give to it. And this is why the same amount of money can feel like freedom to one person, pressure to another, guilt to someone else, and possibility to someone who has learned to use it with clarity and purpose. If you fear money, you may hold it with tension, spend it with guilt, chase it with desperation, or avoid looking at it because the numbers seem to speak louder than your own inner strength. Yet if you learn to respect money as energy, you begin to understand that your task is not to worship it or reject it, but to create a healthier flow between what you value, what you offer, what you receive, and what you allow yourself to become. The energy of money moves where value is created, recognized, exchanged, and trusted, which means that manifestation is not simply about wanting money to appear, but about becoming someone who can notice opportunities, create meaningful value, receive without shame, manage with wisdom, and allow money to serve a purpose greater than fear. This is why the way you feel about money matters, because your emotions influence your decisions influence your habits influence your opportunities, and your opportunities influence the reality you eventually experience. When you believe money is always difficult, you may unconsciously choose the hardest path, because struggle feels familiar. When you believe money never stays with you, you may spend it quickly, lose track of it, or avoid building systems that would help it remain. And when you believe receiving money makes you selfish, you may undercharge, overgive, or shrink yourself in situations where life is asking you to stand in your value. None of this means that every financial challenge is created only by thought, because life is more complex than that, and real circumstances, responsibilities, systems, timing, education, health, family, and opportunity all matter. However, your inner energy toward money still shapes how you respond to those circumstances. And sometimes, the smallest shift in belief can open a door that fear had kept invisible. Money, like energy, needs direction, because when it moves without intention, it can disappear into habits, impulses, distractions, and emotional reactions, while when it is guided with awareness, it can become a tool for stability, freedom, generosity, healing, learning, creation, and long-term expansion. This is why respecting money does not mean becoming obsessed with it, but rather paying attention to it with the same care you would give to anything that has the power to support your life. You respect money when you know what is coming in and what is going out, when you pause before spending from emotion, when you allow yourself to receive fair payment for your work, when you stop treating financial clarity as something frightening, and when you begin to understand that every choice you make with money is also a choice about energy, priority, and direction. If money is energy, then the question is not only how much you have, but how consciously it is moving through your life, because a person can have very little and still be building a healthier, energetic relationship with money, while another person can have more than enough and still live in fear, scarcity, comparison, and emotional emptiness. Abundance is not measured only by accumulation, because true abundance includes the ability to receive, enjoy, manage, share, protect, and grow without losing your peace or forgetting your values. When money comes into your life, it is asking to be met with awareness. And when money leaves your life, it is asking to be directed with intention, because every payment, purchase, investment, donation, gift, bill, and decision is part of a larger conversation between who you are now and the life you are creating. This does not mean you must become perfect, strict, or afraid to enjoy what you earn, because money that is never allowed to bring joy can become another form of control. But it does mean that joy and responsibility can exist together, and that you can spend from appreciation rather than emptiness, save from wisdom rather than fear, and give from overflow rather than guilt. The energy of money expands when it is connected to purpose, because when you know why you desire more, your desire becomes clearer, cleaner, and more powerful. If you want money only because you feel behind, rejected, unseen, or desperate to prove your worth, then the energy behind your desire may feel heavy and restless. But if you want money because you are ready to create stability, support your family, express your gifts, grow your freedom, help others, experience life more fully, and become a clearer channel for value, then your desire begins to feel aligned rather than anxious. There is nothing wrong with wanting more, because desire can be sacred when it comes from expansion instead of emptiness. And wanting a better life does not make you ungrateful for the life you have now. You can be grateful and still desire growth, just as you can appreciate where you are while still knowing that your soul is being called towards something wider, richer, freer, and more honest than the reality you have accepted in the past. Money also teaches you about circulation, because energy that is blocked often becomes stagnant, while energy that moves with awareness creates connection, possibility, and renewal. If you only hold money out of fear, you may never feel safe no matter how much you have, because the fear will keep asking for more proof before it allows you to relax. And if you release money carelessly because holding it feels uncomfortable, you may keep repeating cycles where abundance arrives, but never has the chance to become stability. The balance is found in learning when to hold, when to release, when to invest, when to wait, when to give, when to ask, and when to trust yourself enough to make a decision without needing fear to be the loudest voice in the room. This is where manifestation becomes practical, because the energy of money is not changed only through thoughts, but through repeated choices that teach your mind, body, and spirit that you are capable of living in a new way. Every time you look at your finances with honesty instead of avoidance, you shift energy. Every time you ask to be paid fairly instead of shrinking your value, you shift energy. Every time you choose a wise decision over an impulsive one, you shift energy. Every time you give thanks for what you have while preparing yourself for more, you shift energy. Over time, these shifts become identity, and when your identity changes, your financial life begins to respond not because magic replaced effort, but because you are no longer moving through the world as the same person who believed abundance was far away. You begin to carry yourself differently, speak differently, choose differently, notice differently, and receive differently, because you are no longer waiting for money to prove that you are worthy. You are learning to act from worth before the outer evidence has fully arrived. This is one of the deepest secrets of money as energy. It responds not only to what you want, but to who you are becoming in relationship to what you want. If you want more money, become more honest with yourself. If you want more flow, become less attached to fear. If you want more abundance, become more available to value, discipline, creativity, responsibility, and trust. Let money become a teacher, not because it is more important than love, health, peace, or purpose, but because it can reveal where you are still living from scarcity and where life is inviting you to expand. When you pay attention, money can show you where you need stronger boundaries, where you need more courage, where you need clearer priorities, where you need to stop apologizing for your gifts, and where you need to believe that receiving more does not require becoming less of who you truly are. You are allowed to let money flow towards you in ways that are honest, healthy, creative, and aligned. You are allowed to let money support your peace instead of disturbing it. You are allowed to use money as a tool for freedom without making it the center of your soul. And as you continue this journey, remember that money is not the destination, but it can become a powerful part of the path when you stop treating it as something separate from your growth and begin seeing it as energy that reflects your beliefs, your choices, your value, and your willingness to live with greater intention. Money is energy in motion, and when your own energy becomes clearer, calmer, braver, and more aligned, the way money moves through your life can begin to change as well. Chapter 4. The Power of Belief. Belief is one of the most powerful forces in your life because long before you take action, accept an opportunity, ask for more, invest in yourself, or allow money to move toward you, your beliefs have already begun shaping what you think is possible, what you feel worthy of receiving, and what kind of future you quietly expect to experience. A belief is not simply a thought that passes through your mind. It is a thought that has been repeated, felt, and accepted for long enough that it begins to feel like truth. And once something feels true to you, your emotions, decisions, habits, and identity often begin to organize themselves around it without you even realizing that you are living from a pattern rather than from a conscious choice. This is why two people can stand in front of the same opportunity and experience it in completely different ways, because one person may see possibility, growth, learning, and expansion, while another person may see risk, rejection, embarrassment, failure, or proof that they are not ready, even though the opportunity itself has not changed at all. When it comes to money, your beliefs are often stronger than your desires, because you may consciously want abundance, freedom, security, and success, while deep inside you may still believe that money is difficult, that wealthy people are different from you, that success requires suffering, or that receiving more than you are used to will somehow make you lose love, safety, or belonging. This inner conflict is one of the reasons manifestation can feel confusing, because a person may repeat affirmations, visualize a better life, and dream about financial freedom, while still making everyday decisions from the old belief that abundance is unsafe, unavailable, or not truly meant for someone with their past, their background, their education, or their circumstances. To change your financial reality, you must be willing to examine not only what you want, but also what you believe you are allowed to have. Because sometimes the mind does not resist success because it dislikes success, but because success feels unfamiliar, and what feels unfamiliar can be interpreted as unsafe by the parts of you that learn to survive through staying the same. If you grew up in an environment where money was always connected to stress, conflict, sacrifice, or uncertainty, then peace around money may feel unrealistic at first. And if you watch people work endlessly while still struggling, then ease may feel suspicious, as though receiving more without constant exhaustion means you have done something wrong. The power of belief is not that it magically removes every obstacle, because life will still require action, patience, responsibility, learning, courage, and discipline. The power of belief is that it determines whether you meet those obstacles as someone who expects growth or as someone who expects defeat, and that difference can change the entire direction of your journey. When you believe that money is impossible for you, every challenge becomes evidence that you were right. Yet when you begin to believe that money can become healthier, clearer, and more available in your life, every challenge becomes information. Every mistake becomes feedback, and every delay becomes part of a larger process, rather than a final rejection. This is not about pretending that reality is different from what it is, because true belief is not denial. It is the willingness to see beyond the current evidence while still taking responsibility for the present moment, which means you can acknowledge your financial situation honestly without using it as proof of your permanent identity. Your present financial reality may describe where you are today, but it does not have the authority to decide where you are allowed to go, because the numbers you see now are connected to past choices, past beliefs, past opportunities, and past patterns, while the future is shaped by what you are willing to learn, heal, build, and believe from this moment forward. Every transformation begins with a belief that has not yet become visible, because before a new life appears in physical form, it first appears as an inner possibility, a quiet knowing, or a small but persistent feeling that there must be more available than what has been repeated until now. The difficult part is that old beliefs often feel more believable than new ones, not because they are more true, but because they have been practiced longer, and a belief you have carried for 20 years will naturally feel stronger than a belief you began practicing this morning. This is why changing your mind is not a single moment of inspiration, but a daily act of returning to the truth you are choosing until it becomes familiar enough for your nervous system to trust, and until your choices begin to reflect the new identity you are building. Affirmations can be powerful when they are connected to awareness, emotion, and action, but they become empty when they are used to escape reality rather than transform it, which is why it is often more helpful to begin with beliefs that feel honest enough for your mind to accept and strong enough to guide you toward a new direction. Instead of forcing yourself to say, "I am wealthy," when that statement feels too far away from your current reality, you might begin with, "I am learning to become financially free," or "I am becoming someone who receives, manages, and grows money with wisdom," because a bridge belief can help your mind travel from where you are to where you are going, without asking you to pretend that the journey is already complete. As these new beliefs become more familiar, you may begin to notice opportunities you once ignored, speak differently about your work, manage your money with more care, ask for what you need with more confidence, and make decisions from possibility rather than fear, because belief does not only change what you think, it changes what you are willing to do. There will still be moments when your old beliefs return, especially when you are growing beyond the identity that once kept you safe. But this does not mean you have failed. It simply means that an old pattern is asking for your attention, and instead of obeying it automatically, you now have the power to recognize it, question it, and choose again. You can acknowledge the fear without building your future from it, and you can respect the part of you that learned to survive while still deciding that survival is no longer the highest vision for your life. Over time, as you continue choosing beliefs that support your expansion, what once felt impossible begins to feel possible. What once felt distant begins to feel available. And what once seemed reserved for other people begins to feel like something you are also allowed to experience. This is not because belief alone changed everything, but because belief changed the way you moved through everything. And when you begin to move through life as someone who is more open, more responsible, more courageous, and more available to receive, your relationship with opportunity, money, and possibility begins to change as well. The power of belief is not found in fantasy, but in the quiet and steady decision to stop agreeing with every limitation you inherited, absorbed, or practiced in a world that may have taught you to expect less than what your spirit knows is possible. As you continue this journey, listen more closely to the beliefs that speak inside you when money is mentioned, when opportunity appears, when success comes near, or when life asks you to become visible in a new way, because those beliefs will show you whether you are moving from fear or from faith, from limitation or from expansion. from the past you survived, or from the future you are ready to create. Once you begin changing what you believe is possible, you also begin changing what you notice, what you choose, what you receive, and what you are brave enough to build. And although belief may begin invisibly in the private space of your mind and heart, its effects eventually become visible in the way you stand, speak, work, decide, ask, give, receive, and create a life that no longer requires you to shrink in order to feel safe. Belief is the doorway through which a new reality begins to enter. And once you decide to walk through that doorway with trust, discipline, and courage, the journey toward abundance becomes not only something you desire, but something you are actively becoming. Chapter 5. Becoming the version of you who receives. There comes a moment on the journey of manifesting money when you begin to understand that abundance is not only about attracting something outside of yourself, but about becoming the kind of person who can receive, hold, respect, grow, and use that abundance in a way that supports your life instead of overwhelming it. Many people focus only on the desire for more money, more freedom, more comfort, more opportunities, and more security, but they rarely ask themselves who they would need to become in order to live peacefully inside the reality they are asking for. And this is why the inner transformation must happen alongside the outer manifestation. Receiving is not always as simple as wanting, because a person can deeply desire abundance while still feeling uncomfortable, unworthy, guilty, or afraid when life begins to offer them more than they have known before. Sometimes the obstacle is not that money is unavailable, but that the identity you have been living from does not yet feel safe enough to receive it. If you have spent years surviving, struggling, overgiving, undercharging, worrying, or believing that life requires constant effort just to stay stable, then receiving with ease may feel unfamiliar. And because unfamiliar things can feel unsafe at first, you may unconsciously push away the very opportunities you have been praying for. This is why becoming the version of you who receives is one of the most important parts of the journey, because money can enter your life in many ways. But if your identity is still built around fear, scarcity, guilt, or not enoughness, you may not know how to let it stay, how to let it grow, or how to let it support you without creating inner conflict. The version of you who receives is not a perfect version, and it is not someone who never feels doubt, never makes mistakes, or never has to learn difficult lessons. Rather, it is the version of you who no longer treats receiving as something suspicious, shameful, or reserved for other people. This version of you understands that receiving is not taking too much from life, because when you receive in alignment with value, purpose, service, creativity, and integrity, you are participating in a natural exchange rather than stealing from someone else's abundance. To become this version of yourself, you must begin by noticing the places where you resist receiving, because resistance does not always look like rejection. Sometimes it looks like minimizing your gifts, refusing help, underpricing your work, delaying your dreams, avoiding visibility, apologizing for your needs, or feeling guilty when something good happens without struggle. You may say you want more money, yet feel uncomfortable charging what your work is worth. And you may say you want more opportunities, yet hide your ideas because being seen feels risky. You may say you want support, yet reject kindness when it appears, because a part of you learned that needing anything makes you weak, dependent, or undeserving. These patterns do not mean you are blocking abundance on purpose, because most resistance begins as protection, and the parts of you that resist receiving may simply be trying to keep you safe from disappointment, judgment, rejection, responsibility, or change. But protection can become limitation when it keeps you attached to a life that no longer matches who you are becoming. And at some point, you must ask yourself whether the identity that helped you survive is still capable of helping you expand. The version of you who receives has a different relationship with worthiness, because they do not wait for the world to approve of them before they allow themselves to step forward. They understand that worthiness is not earned through exhaustion, perfection, suffering, or constant proof, and they do not believe that they must become flawless before they are allowed to be paid well, supported deeply, loved fully, or trusted with more. This does not mean they are careless, entitled, or disconnected from responsibility, because true receiving requires maturity. It means they know the difference between becoming better from growth and trying to become worthy through endless self-punishment. If you believe you must suffer before you receive, you may unconsciously create unnecessary struggle around money, because part of you may not trust ease unless it has been paid for with exhaustion. If you believe you must be perfect before you receive, you may delay your work, hide your ideas, or avoid opportunities until you feel completely ready, even though readiness often grows only after you begin. If you believe receiving more will make people judge you, leave you, envy you, or misunderstand you, you may keep yourself smaller than your potential in order to protect relationships that were built around the older version of you. Becoming the version of you who receives requires you to gently release the belief that staying limited keeps everyone comfortable, because your expansion is not a betrayal of where you came from, and your growth does not mean you are abandoning the people, places, or experiences that shaped you. You can honor your past without living inside its limitations forever. You can love people who are not ready for your expansion without shrinking yourself to make your growth easier for them to accept. You can become more successful, more abundant, more confident, and more visible while remaining humble, kind, generous, and connected to what truly matters. The version of you who receives understands that abundance requires capacity, and capacity is the inner ability to hold more without losing your peace, your values, your direction, or your sense of self. If life gave you everything you asked for today, would you know how to manage it, protect it, honor it, and use it wisely? Or would the unfamiliar weight of it create pressure, confusion, fear, or self-sabotage? This question is not meant to discourage you, but to prepare you, because manifestation is not only about calling something in, it is also about becoming strong, clear, grounded, and responsible enough to live inside the blessing without turning it into a burden. Capacity grows through practice, and every small act of receiving can become training for the larger abundance you are asking for. You build capacity when you accept a compliment without dismissing it, when you allow someone to support you without feeling guilty, when you charge fairly for your work, when you look at your finances with honesty, when you keep promises to yourself, when you make decisions from clarity instead of fear, and when you stop treating your desires as if they are too much. The more you practice receiving in small ways, the more natural it becomes to receive in larger ways, because your nervous system begins to learn that abundance is not dangerous, that support is not shameful, and that more can come into your life without taking you away from yourself. This is where identity becomes powerful, because the life you manifest will always be connected to the person you believe yourself to be. If you believe you are someone who always struggles, you will keep searching for struggle even when easier paths appear. But if you begin to believe you are someone who is learning to receive, create, manage, and expand, your choices will slowly begin to align with that new identity. Identity is built through repetition, not fantasy, which means you do not become the version of you who receives by imagining them once and waiting for everything to change, but by asking again and again, how that version would think, speak, choose, act, spend, save, give, ask, and respond in the life you are living today? Would the version of you who receives apologize for wanting more? Or would they honor their desire as a sign of expansion? Would they hide their gifts? Or would they allow those gifts to become useful in the world? Would they spend from emptiness? Or would they choose from alignment? Would they avoid money out of fear? Or would they meet it with maturity and care? Would they wait to feel worthy? Or would they practice worthiness through action? Each answer gives you a doorway into a new way of being, and each choice you make from that new identity becomes evidence that you are no longer the same person who believed abundance was far away. You do not need to become someone else in order to receive more. You need to become more fully available to the truth of who you already are, without letting fear, shame, or old conditioning decide how much life you are allowed to experience. The journey into abundance is not asking you to abandon your softness, your kindness, your humility, or your humanity, because real abundance does not require you to become cold, greedy, or disconnected. It asks you to become clearer. It asks you to become braver. It asks you to become more honest about your value. It asks you to become someone who can receive without shrinking and succeed without losing their soul. As you become the version of you who receives, you may notice that life begins to meet you differently, not because the world suddenly becomes perfect, but because you no longer approach it from the same old agreement with limitation. You begin to say yes to opportunities that once intimidated you, no to patterns that once drained you, and maybe to possibilities that deserve time, patience, and courage. You begin to understand that receiving is not a single event, but a relationship you build with life one moment, one decision, and one act of trust at a time. So do not wait until everything changes before you become this version of yourself, because becoming is the bridge between where you are and what you desire. Become someone who can hold more peace. Become someone who can receive more support. Become someone who can manage more money with wisdom. Become someone who can be visible without apology. Become someone who can trust that abundance can enter your life without taking away your truth. The more you become available to receiving, the more you realize that abundance was never only about money, because money is one expression of a deeper permission to live fully, to participate courageously, to create honestly, and to allow life to meet you with more goodness than your old story taught you to expect. And when you finally understand that receiving is not something you must earn through suffering, but something you can learn to welcome through alignment, responsibility, and self-worth, you begin to step into a new identity, one that no longer asks life for abundance from the doorway of fear, but walks toward it with the quiet confidence of someone who is ready to become a match for what they have been asking to receive. Chapter 6. Gratitude before evidence. Gratitude before evidence is one of the most difficult and beautiful practices on the journey of manifesting money, because it asks you to feel appreciation before life has fully shown you the result, to honor what is already present before everything you desire has arrived, and to trust that your inner state can become a foundation for expansion, even while your outer reality is still in the process of changing. Many people believe they will become grateful once they finally have enough money, once the pressure disappears, once the opportunity comes, once the debt is gone, once the business grows, or once life gives them a clear sign that everything is working in their favor. Yet this way of thinking keeps gratitude waiting at the end of the road, as if appreciation is a reward for arrival rather than a power that can support the journey itself. True gratitude is not the denial of your desire for more, and it is not the performance of happiness while you secretly feel afraid, because gratitude does not ask you to pretend that your life is perfect. Instead, it invites you to recognize that even in an unfinished chapter, there are still signs of support, lessons that are shaping you, resources you can build from, and small openings through which a new reality can begin to enter. When you practice gratitude before evidence, you are not saying that your current financial situation is the final expression of what you deserve, but rather that you refuse to meet your present moment only with shame, panic, resentment, or lack, because the energy you bring to where you are often influences the clarity, courage, and creativity with which you move toward where you want to be. A person who lives only in the feeling of not enough may overlook the opportunities already near them, dismiss the progress they have made, undervalue the resources in their hands, and make decisions from fear, while a person who practices gratitude can begin to see that abundance often starts quietly through a new idea, a helpful conversation, a lesson learned, a skill strengthened, a bill paid on time, a moment of courage, or a small amount of money handled with more wisdom than before. Gratitude changes perception, and perception changes participation. Because when your mind is trained only to notice what is missing, life can feel like a closed door. But when your mind begins to notice what is growing, what is possible, what is available, and what is already supporting you, your relationship with money becomes less desperate and more receptive. This does not mean that gratitude alone replaces action, because no sincere journey toward abundance can be built only on beautiful thoughts, but gratitude can change the emotional quality of the action you take, allowing you to move from steadiness rather than panic, from trust rather than pressure, and from expansion rather than the exhausting belief that you must fight life in order to be supported by it. There is a quiet strength in being able to say, I am grateful for what I have, and I am still open to more. Because this statement allows appreciation and desire to exist together, without turning gratitude into resignation or ambition into dissatisfaction. You are allowed to want more while still honoring what is already here, just as you are allowed to dream of a larger life while still recognizing the small blessings, the lessons, the relationships, the abilities, and the moments of protection that have carried you to this point. When gratitude becomes part of your financial journey, even money itself begins to feel different, because you no longer see it only as something that is missing, late, insufficient, or difficult to keep, but as a form of energy that is already moving through your life in different ways, even if it is not yet moving at the speed, level, or volume you desire. You can be grateful for the money that paid for food, for the money that kept a light on, for the money that allowed you to learn something, for the money that helped you rest, for the money that arrived unexpectedly, and even for the money that taught you a lesson through a mistake, because every interaction with money can become part of your education if you are willing to meet it with awareness instead of only judgment. The practice of gratitude before evidence also helps heal the fear that says nothing is changing, because when you are able to notice small signs of progress, your mind begins to build a new relationship with possibility. And instead of waiting for one dramatic miracle to prove that abundance is real, you begin to recognize that transformation often arrives through a series of quiet adjustments that slowly reshape the direction of your life. A new belief practiced today, a wiser decision made tomorrow, a conversation you once would have avoided, a price you finally have the courage to raise, a skill you decide to develop, or a moment when you choose not to spend from emptiness, can all become evidence that your abundance is already beginning, even before the final result has appeared. Gratitude does not make you passive. When practiced honestly, it makes you more present, because you cannot be truly grateful for your life while also abandoning your responsibility to participate in it. The more grateful you become, the more carefully you begin to treat what is in your hands, and the more carefully you treat what is in your hands, the more prepared you become for what you are asking life to bring next. If you cannot appreciate a small amount of money, it may be difficult to respect a larger amount, not because you are unworthy of more, but because abundance grows more peacefully when your relationship with what you already have is built on awareness, care, and responsibility. This is why gratitude and stewardship belong together, because to be grateful for money is not only to say thank you when it arrives, but also to direct it with intention, to understand its purpose, to avoid wasting it on wounds you are not healing, and to let it become a tool for stability, freedom, generosity, and growth. There will be days when gratitude feels natural, and there will be days when it feels like something you must choose with effort, especially when the evidence around you seems slow, uncertain, or far away from the vision you hold inside your heart. On those days, gratitude does not need to be loud, perfect, or dramatic, because sometimes it is enough to notice one thing that is still working, one lesson that is still shaping you, one possibility that is not completely closed, or one part of yourself that has not given up. The deeper purpose of gratitude is not to convince the universe that you are worthy of receiving, because you do not need to perform worthiness in order to deserve a better life. The deeper purpose is to return your own mind and heart to a state where fear is no longer the only voice guiding your choices. When gratitude becomes stronger than resentment, you begin to create from a different place. And when you create from a different place, the work you offer, the decisions you make, the opportunities you notice, and the way you allow yourself to receive can begin to change. Gratitude before evidence is an act of trust, but it is also an act of identity, because the person who can give thanks before everything is visible is someone who has started to believe that life is not limited to what can be measured in the present moment. This does not mean you will never feel doubt, because doubt is part of every meaningful expansion. But it does mean that doubt no longer has to become the ruler of your inner world. You can feel uncertain and still be grateful for the step in front of you. You can feel afraid and still honor the progress you have made. And you can desire more while still recognizing that life has already given you something to build with. As you continue this journey, let gratitude become a daily practice, not as a ritual you perform without feeling, but as a way of training your attention to see abundance where fear once saw only absence. Be grateful for the money that comes, for the lessons that teach you how to manage it, for the courage that helps you ask for it, for the wisdom that helps you grow it, and for the inner transformation that allows you to receive it without losing your peace. Because when you learn to be grateful before the evidence is complete, you stop living as someone who is waiting for life to prove that abundance is possible, and you begin living as someone who is already in relationship with abundance, already preparing for it, already respecting it, and already becoming the kind of person who can welcome more with an open heart, a clear mind, and a steady spirit. Chapter 7. Aligned Action. Manifestation becomes truly powerful when it moves from thought into action, because although belief, visualization, gratitude, and inner alignment can open your mind to new possibilities, it is through the choices you make, the steps you take, the conversations you begin, the skills you develop, and the courage you practice in the physical world that abundance is given a path to enter your life. Many people misunderstand manifestation because they imagine it as a process of waiting, wishing, hoping, and expecting life to rearrange itself without their participation. Yet real manifestation is not passive. and it does not ask you to sit still while your dreams remain untouched by effort, discipline, responsibility, and movement. Aligned action is the bridge between the life you imagine and the life you are willing to build, because it takes the energy of desire and gives it direction, structure, commitment, and form. It is not action taken from panic, desperation, comparison, or the belief that you must prove your worth through exhaustion, but action taken from clarity, trust, purpose, and the understanding that your choices are part of the conversation between your inner world and the reality you are creating. There is a difference between forced action and aligned action, and learning to recognize that difference can change the way you approach money, work, opportunity, and growth. Forced action usually comes from fear, and it often feels rushed, heavy, scattered, and draining, because it is driven by the belief that if you do not do everything at once, if you do not push harder than your body and spirit can handle, or if you do not chase every possible path, then abundance will disappear before it has the chance to reach you. Aligned action, on the other hand, may still require effort, discipline, patience, and courage, but it carries a different energy, because even when the task is difficult, there is a sense that the step belongs to the direction you are moving in, that it respects your values, and that it supports the person you are becoming, rather than punishing the person you have been. This does not mean aligned action will always feel comfortable, because growth often asks you to move beyond what feels familiar, and sometimes the most aligned step is the one that makes your heart beat faster because it requires visibility, honesty, confidence, or a level of responsibility you have not fully practiced before. You may need to send the message, make the offer, raise the price, apply for the opportunity, learn the skill, create the product, organize your finances, ask for guidance, leave an old pattern, or finally begin the idea you have carried quietly for too long. These actions may not always feel easy, but if they are connected to your growth, your values, and your vision, they can become doors through which abundance begins to move. The universe can bring opportunities, but you must be willing to meet them. Life can place ideas in your mind, but you must be willing to develop them. Desire can show you a direction, but you must be willing to walk. This is where many people stop, not because they lack dreams, but because they mistake the feeling of fear for a sign that they are not ready, when in truth, fear often appears at the edge of expansion, precisely because you are about to step outside the identity that has kept you familiar with limitation. If you wait until you feel completely confident before taking action, you may wait for years, because confidence is not always something that comes before movement. Often, confidence is built through the evidence you create by keeping promises to yourself and discovering that you are capable of doing what once intimidated you. Aligned action teaches your mind that your desires are not fantasies floating somewhere outside your life, but commitments you are willing to honor through behavior. Every time you take a step that matches your vision, you are telling yourself that your future matters. Every time you choose discipline over avoidance, you are telling yourself that you can be trusted with more. Every time you act from worth rather than fear, you are telling life that you are available to receive at a higher level. But action must be connected to awareness, because movement without intention can become another form of escape. Some people stay busy because stillness would force them to feel the fear beneath their ambition, while others take endless courses, make endless plans, and collect endless ideas because preparing feels safer than actually becoming visible. Aligned action is not about doing more for the sake of doing more. It is about doing what is true, timely, useful, and connected to the reality you are choosing to create. Sometimes aligned action is bold, such as launching the business, asking for the raise, making the investment, changing careers, or stepping into a room where your future has been waiting for your courage. Sometimes aligned action is quiet, such as tracking your expenses, resting before burnout, saying no to something that drains your energy, cleaning your environment, finishing a small task, or choosing not to spend money in a way that only comforts a wound for a moment, while keeping the deeper pattern alive. Both kinds of action matter, because abundance is not built only through dramatic decisions. It is also built through repeated acts of responsibility that slowly teach your life to hold more stability, more clarity, and more trust. If you want to manifest money, ask yourself what action your future is asking from you today, not in a way that overwhelms you, but in a way that brings your energy back into movement. It may be one email, one conversation, 1 hour of focused work, one honest look at your finances, one new habit, one decision to stop undercharging, or one moment of choosing courage where avoidance used to live. The step does not need to be perfect in order to be powerful, because momentum is often created by imperfect action taken with sincere intention. You do not need to know the entire path before you begin, and in many cases, you will not see the next step until you have honored the one already in front of you. This is how trust and action begin to work together, because trust without action can become fantasy, while action without trust can become exhaustion. When trust and action meet, you move differently, because you are no longer trying to control every detail of the future, yet you are also not abandoning your responsibility to participate in its creation. You begin to understand that manifestation is a co-creative process, where your inner alignment shapes what you believe is possible, and your outer action gives possibility a structure through which it can become real. There will be days when action feels inspired, and there will be days when it feels ordinary, but both have value, because not every step on the journey will feel magical, and sometimes the most transformational actions are the ones that look simple from the outside, but require deep inner courage from within. Paying attention to your money when you used to avoid it may not look impressive to anyone else, but it can change your entire relationship with responsibility. Asking for what your work is worth may seem like one conversation, but it can become a turning point in how you value yourself. Choosing to begin again after disappointment may appear quiet, but it can become the moment your old identity loses its power over your future. Aligned action is not always loud, but it is always honest. It asks you to stop waiting for life to prove that you are ready before you behave like someone who is becoming ready. It asks you to move with the faith that clarity often grows through action, not before it. It asks you to trust that each aligned step, no matter how small, is part of a larger pattern that your current mind may not yet be able to see. As you continue this journey, remember that abundance does not come only to those who dream, but to those who become available through belief, preparation, courage, and movement. Let your actions become evidence of your new identity. Let your choices reflect the life you say you are calling in. Let your discipline become an expression of self-respect, rather than self-punishment. Let your courage be practical, not only emotional, because the life you desire will need your hands, your voice, your decisions, your consistency, and your willingness to take the next step, even before the whole road is visible. Manifestation is not proven by how beautifully you imagine the future, but by how faithfully you begin to participate in its creation today. And when your actions become aligned with your beliefs, your values, your gratitude, and the version of yourself who is ready to receive, money no longer feels like something you are begging life to send from far away. It becomes part of a living exchange between who you are, what you offer, what you choose, and how courageously you are willing to walk toward the abundance that has been waiting for your participation. Chapter 8. Abundance in Daily Life. Abundance does not begin only when a large amount of money arrives, when every problem disappears, or when life finally looks exactly the way you once imagined it would, because abundance begins much earlier, in the way you wake up, the way you speak to yourself, the way you use what is already in your hands, and the way you choose to meet ordinary moments with more awareness, more trust, and more respect for the life you are building. Many people think of abundance as something far away, something that belongs to a future version of themselves, who has more money, more confidence, more freedom, and more proof that everything is working out. But if abundance is always placed in the future, it becomes difficult to recognize the small forms of it that are already present today, quietly teaching you that life is not empty just because it is unfinished. Abundance can be found in a quiet morning when you have the chance to begin again, in a meal that gives your body strength, in an idea that arrives when you are willing to listen, in a conversation that opens a new perspective, in a skill you are learning, in a mistake that teaches you something useful, and in the simple but powerful decision to keep moving, even when the whole path is not yet clear. This does not mean you should pretend that everything is perfect, because a natural and honest relationship with abundance does not require you to ignore your bills, your responsibilities, your fears, or the parts of your life that still need care. It only asks you not to reduce your entire life to what is missing, as though the absence of one thing has the right to erase every form of support, progress, and possibility that already exists around you. When you live only from the feeling of lack, your attention becomes trained to search for what is absent, what is late, what is difficult, and what has not yet arrived. And over time, this way of seeing can make even real blessings feel invisible, not because they are small or meaningless, but because fear has become too loud to let you notice them with a clear and open heart. Bringing abundance into daily life means learning to notice what supports you while still working toward what you desire. And it means allowing gratitude, responsibility, and ambition to live together instead of treating them as opposites. Because you can be thankful for what you have and still want more. You can appreciate today and still build tomorrow. And you can be proud of small progress while still knowing that you are meant to grow beyond your current circumstances. In daily life, abundance often shows itself through the way you care for your energy, because the way you spend your time, attention, and emotions is closely connected to the way you experience money, opportunity, confidence, and the sense of possibility that determines whether you move through the day as someone who is expanding or someone who is only surviving. If you give your best energy to worry, comparison, resentment, and self-doubt, you may find yourself feeling poor even in moments when life is offering you something valuable. But if you begin to protect your attention and choose thoughts that support growth, you create a more peaceful inner space from which clearer decisions can be made. And from that space, your actions become less reactive and more aligned with the future you are trying to build. A more abundant life does not always begin with a dramatic change, because sometimes it begins when you stop speaking to yourself as if you are failing, when you stop repeating that money never stays, when you stop making your future smaller just because your past was difficult, and when you stop treating your dreams as if they are too unrealistic to deserve your effort, your discipline, and your belief. Your words matter because they shape the emotional climate you live in every day. And although words alone will not pay your bills or build your future, they can either strengthen the version of you who is learning to grow or keep you loyal to the version of you who believes nothing can change. Which is why the way you describe your life becomes part of the way you participate in it. A natural practice of abundance might be as simple as asking yourself each morning what you can do that day to support the life you want, and then choosing one honest step. Whether that step is organizing your money, finishing a task, sending a message, learning something useful, resting before you burn out, or choosing not to spend from emotion just because an uncomfortable feeling is asking for quick relief. Abundance grows through daily choices, and these choices do not always look impressive from the outside, because many of the most important changes happen quietly in the way you respond to stress, the way you keep promises to yourself, the way you care for what you already own, and the way you make room for better things without despising where you are now, or treating your present life as if it has no value simply because it is not yet complete. Look at the things in your life that are already supporting you, and instead of rushing past them because they are familiar, begin to treat them with more respect, because the home you have, even if it is not your dream home, can be cared for as a place that holds your becoming. The money you have, even if it is not yet the amount you desire, can be managed as evidence that you are learning responsibility, and the work you do, even if it is not the final expression of your purpose, can be approached as a place where discipline, skill, and confidence are being built. The relationships that truly support you can also be appreciated as part of your wealth, because abundance is not only measured by what you can buy, but also by what helps you feel grounded, loved, encouraged, understood, and alive. When you begin to include these forms of richness in your awareness, you stop reducing your life to a single number and start seeing the wider field of value that is already present. When you begin to see daily life through this lens, you start to understand that abundance is not something you switch on only when everything is perfect. It is something you practice in the middle of becoming, in the moments when you choose quality over impulse, peace over drama, clarity over avoidance, and self-respect over the temporary comfort of old patterns that may have kept you familiar with lack. Abundance is present when you pay attention to where your money goes, not because you are afraid of it disappearing, but because you respect the energy it represents. And it is present when you allow yourself to enjoy something beautiful without guilt, because joy is also part of a wealthy life when it is experienced with presence, balance, and appreciation, rather than used as an escape from what still needs to be healed. Abundance in daily life also means creating space, because nothing new can easily enter a life that is crowded with habits, beliefs, commitments, objects, and emotional patterns that no longer match the person you are becoming. And sometimes you make space by clearing a room, organizing your finances, ending an old cycle, choosing better boundaries, or simply admitting that a certain version of your life no longer feels true. This kind of space is powerful because it tells your mind that you are preparing for more, not from desperation, but from readiness. And it teaches your inner world that you are allowed to make room for more money, more peace, more opportunity, more love, more confidence, and more freedom, without needing to hold on to every pattern that once helped you survive. If you keep saying you want abundance while filling your days with choices that drain your energy, disrespect your value, or keep you disconnected from your own goals, life may feel confusing, because your desire is moving in one direction while your habits are moving in another. And at some point, the journey asks you to bring your daily behavior into agreement with the future you say you are calling in. This is why daily alignment matters, because a new life is not created only through big moments of inspiration, but through small decisions repeated often enough that they become the structure of who you are and every day gives you a chance to practice abundance before the final evidence arrives, whether through the way you breathe before making a financial decision, the way you speak about your future, the way you celebrate progress, or the way you stop comparing your journey to someone else's timeline and begin trusting the pace at which your own life is unfolding. A natural, abundant life is not about pretending to be rich before you are ready, and it is not about spending money you do not have in order to feel successful for a moment. It is about carrying yourself with the quiet dignity of someone who knows they are growing, learning, and becoming more capable of receiving what they have been asking for. As you practice abundance in daily life, you may notice that your relationship with money becomes less tense, because money is no longer treated as the only proof that life is good, but as one part of a larger experience of value, purpose, care, and possibility, and you may begin to see that the same energy that helps you appreciate a small blessing can also help you recognize a larger opportunity, while the same discipline that helps you manage a small amount of money can help you manage more when it comes. The way you treat the small things teaches life how you may treat the larger things, and it also teaches you that you do not need to wait for a perfect future before you begin living with more intention today, because the person who can honor a small beginning is already becoming prepared for a greater expansion. So let abundance become part of your ordinary life in the way you make your bed, answer a message, choose your words, prepare your food, manage your money, protect your time, and honor your dreams, and let it be present in the way you stop rushing past the present as if it has nothing to offer simply because it is not yet the destination you are moving toward. Build slowly, honestly, and patiently, knowing that every aligned choice is helping you become the kind of person who can hold the life you desire, because abundance is not only something you receive at the end of the journey, it is something you learn to recognize, practice, and embody along the way, until one day you look around and realize that the life you once hoped for did not arrive all at once, but was built through the quiet power of the choices you made every day. Chapter 9. Trust the timing. Trusting the timing of your life is one of the hardest lessons on the journey toward abundance, because once you have begun to believe differently, think differently, act differently, and open yourself to receiving more, it is natural to want the evidence to appear quickly, clearly, and exactly in the form you imagined, as if life should immediately confirm that your inner transformation has been noticed and rewarded. But life does not always move according to the schedule of your desire, and money does not always arrive the moment you decide you are ready, because sometimes what you are asking for requires not only belief, but preparation, maturity, patience, alignment, and a deeper capacity to hold the very thing you want without losing yourself in the process. There are seasons when everything seems to move slowly, when the opportunities are not yet visible, when the numbers have not yet changed, when the door you expected to open remains closed, and when your mind begins to wonder whether the work you have been doing inside yourself is truly making any difference at all. In those moments, trusting the timing does not mean pretending you are never disappointed, and it does not mean forcing yourself to feel peaceful when your heart is tired, because trust is not the absence of emotion. It is the decision not to let temporary uncertainty become the final story you tell about your future. Sometimes the delay is not rejection, but preparation, because the time between asking and receiving may be shaping your discipline, strengthening your clarity, revealing what still needs to be healed, teaching you how to manage what you already have, and helping you become the version of yourself who can receive more without turning abundance into pressure. If everything arrived before you had the capacity to hold it, What looked like a blessing could easily become overwhelming, because more money, more success, more visibility, and more opportunity do not remove the need for wisdom. They increase it. This is why the waiting season matters, even when it feels uncomfortable, because it is often in the quiet and unseen spaces that your foundation is being built. And while your outer life may not yet reflect the full size of your vision, your inner life may be learning the steadiness, patience, and responsibility that your next chapter will require. A seed does not become a tree simply because it wants to grow faster. And although the image is simple, the truth behind it is powerful, because roots must develop before branches can rise, strength must form before expansion can be sustained, and what is unseen is often the reason something visible can last. Your abundance may be developing in the same way, not as a sudden event that appears without preparation, but as a gradual unfolding that begins in your beliefs, continues through your choices, strengthens through your habits, and eventually becomes visible in opportunities, resources, relationships, and results that align with the person you have been becoming. Trusting the timing does not mean becoming passive, because patience without participation can become avoidance, and waiting without movement can become an excuse to remain where you are. Real trust is active, alive, and willing to keep showing up even when the evidence is still forming. You continue to take aligned action, continue to improve your relationship with money, continue to learn, continue to practice gratitude, continue to respect what is already in your hands, and continue to move in the direction of your vision, not because you can control every outcome, but because you can choose the energy, discipline, and intention with which you meet the path. There is a quiet difference between waiting from fear and waiting from trust, because waiting from fear feels like holding your breath until life finally gives you permission to relax, while waiting from trust feels like continuing to become, continuing to prepare, and continuing to live with meaning even before everything has arrived. When you wait from fear, every delay feels personal. Every closed door feels like proof that you are not worthy. And every comparison becomes evidence that life is moving faster for everyone else. But when you wait from trust, you can still feel disappointment without turning it into identity. And you can still experience uncertainty without deciding that your future has been denied. Comparison is one of the greatest enemies of trusting your own timing, because when you measure your journey against someone else's visible results, you may forget that you are only seeing a small part of their story, not the years of preparation, struggle, sacrifice, mistakes, healing, discipline, and invisible growth that may have shaped what you now admire. Someone else's success is not proof of your failure, and someone else's speed is not evidence that you are late, because your path has its own lessons, its own rhythm, its own preparation, and its own unfolding. You are not behind simply because your life does not look like another person's life, and you are not failing simply because the thing you desire is taking longer than you hoped. The timing of your journey may be teaching you something that instant results could never teach you, because patience can reveal whether your desire is rooted in truth or only in urgency, whether your discipline depends on immediate reward or deeper commitment, and whether your faith is strong enough to continue even when the outcome is not yet visible. This does not mean you should accept stagnation as destiny, because trusting the timing is not the same as ignoring the need for change. And there are moments when waiting becomes unhealthy if it is only hiding fear, procrastination, confusion, or the refusal to take responsibility. Part of wisdom is learning the difference between a season that requires patience and a pattern that requires action, because sometimes life is asking you to wait with trust, and sometimes it is asking you to move with courage. If you are doing nothing because you are afraid, that is not divine timing. That is avoidance asking to be healed. If you are refusing to make a decision because uncertainty feels uncomfortable, that is not patience. That is fear trying to sound wise. If you are ignoring opportunities because they do not look exactly like your fantasy, that is not trust. That is control wearing the mask of discernment. Trusting the timing means you stay open enough to recognize that life may bring abundance through a path different from the one you imagined. And sometimes the opportunity that changes everything will not arrive with the appearance you expected, because it may come through a conversation, a lesson, a small beginning, an unexpected redirection, or a door that first looks too ordinary to matter. When you trust the timing, you stop demanding that life prove itself on your exact schedule, and you begin listening more carefully to what this season is asking you to learn, release, strengthen, or prepare. Maybe this season is teaching you to manage money with more respect before more money comes. Maybe it is teaching you to become visible before the larger opportunity appears. Maybe it is teaching you to create value before expecting reward. Maybe it is teaching you to stop confusing speed with alignment. Maybe it is teaching you that the journey is not empty just because the destination has not arrived. There is a kind of peace that comes when you no longer use timing as a weapon against yourself. Because instead of saying, "It should have happened by now," you begin to say, "I am still becoming. And what is meant for my growth is not lost just because it is not here yet." This kind of trust does not make you weak. It makes you steady. It allows you to move through waiting seasons without abandoning yourself, and it helps you continue taking meaningful steps without needing every step to produce immediate proof. The more you trust the timing, the more you begin to understand that manifestation is not only about receiving quickly, but about receiving well, because what arrives before you are ready may leave as quickly as it came, while what arrives in alignment with your growth has a stronger foundation on which to stay. So continue to prepare for the abundance you desire, not from desperation, but from devotion to the life you are building. Continue to become someone who can hold more with wisdom. Continue to respect what is already in your hands. Continue to take the next honest step, even when the full path is not visible. Continue to believe that slow progress is still progress when it is moving you in the direction of truth. One day, you may look back and realize that what felt like delay was actually development, that what felt like silence was actually preparation, and that what felt like nothing happening was actually the quiet construction of a stronger version of you. And when the evidence finally begins to appear, you may understand that the timing was not only about when money arrived, but about who you became before it did. Trust the timing, not because waiting is always easy, but because your journey is shaping something deeper than a result. And the abundance that is meant to support your life will meet you more fully when you have become ready not only to receive it, but to walk with it wisely, gratefully, and without losing the truth of who you are. Chapter 10. The journey continues. The journey does not end when more money arrives, when a dream becomes real, or when your outer life finally begins to reflect the inner work you have been doing. Because abundance was never meant to be a final destination where you stop growing, stop learning, or stop becoming. It was always meant to be part of a larger journey in which you continue to understand yourself, your value, your purpose, and the way you are meant to move through the world. By now, you may understand that manifesting money is not only about attracting numbers into a bank account, but about healing the beliefs that made receiving feel unsafe, changing the patterns that kept you connected to lack, learning to respect money as energy, and becoming the version of yourself who can hold more without losing peace, humility, gratitude, or direction. Money can support your freedom, but it cannot replace your relationship with yourself. And this is why the journey must continue even after your financial reality begins to change. Because the person who receives more must also become the person who uses more with wisdom, gives more with intention, creates more with courage, and lives more honestly from the truth of who they are. There is a beautiful danger in thinking that one achievement will finally make you complete. Because if you believe that happiness lives only at the next level, you may reach that level and immediately begin searching for another one, never allowing yourself to feel the meaning of what you have already become. This is why life is a journey, not a destination, because every goal you reach becomes a doorway into deeper awareness, and every blessing you receive brings with it a new invitation to grow in responsibility, presence, gratitude, and purpose. The money you desire is not separate from the life you are building. It is connected to your choices, your beliefs, your courage, your discipline, your creativity, your relationships, your ability to receive, and your willingness to keep walking even when the path feels uncertain. When you understand this, you stop treating money as the thing that will finally save you, and you begin to see it as a resource that can support the person you are becoming and the life you are choosing to create. The journey continues every time you choose trust over panic, clarity over avoidance, gratitude over resentment, and aligned action over waiting for life to change without your participation. It continues every time you look at your finances with honesty, every time you respect your own value, every time you say yes to an opportunity that feels aligned, and every time you say no to something that would pull you back into a version of yourself you have outgrown. You may still have days when fear returns, when old beliefs speak loudly, or when your progress feels slower than you hoped. But those moments do not erase your growth, because healing is not proven by never doubting again. It is proven by your ability to recognize the old story and choose not to build your future from it. The life you are creating will ask for patience, but it will also ask for participation, because abundance grows best when trust and action walk together, when faith does not become passivity, and when effort does not become punishment. As you continue, remember that wealth is not only what you accumulate, but also what you are able to enjoy, protect, share, and use in alignment with your values. A wealthy life is not only a life with money, it is a life with meaning, freedom, peace, love, health, creativity, purpose, and the deep inner knowing that you are allowed to receive without becoming disconnected from what truly matters. Let money become a servant of your life, not the master of your soul, and let abundance become a language through which you express stability, generosity, beauty, growth, and possibility. You are allowed to want more, and you are allowed to become more, but you do not need to abandon your heart in order to build a larger life. You can be ambitious and grateful, successful and kind, wealthy and grounded, powerful and peaceful, because true abundance does not ask you to lose yourself. It asks you to become more fully yourself. So keep walking, not as someone chasing a destination that will finally prove their worth, but as someone who understands that every step, every lesson, every challenge, every blessing, and every new beginning is shaping them into a person who can live with more awareness and more freedom. The journey continues in the way you think, in the way you speak, in the way you work, in the way you give, in the way you receive, and in the way you choose to believe that your life can expand beyond the limits you once accepted. And perhaps the greatest manifestation is not only the money that comes, but the person you become along the way. Someone braver, calmer, wiser, more open, more responsible, and more willing to live as though abundance is not a distant miracle, but a relationship with life that can be practiced every single day. Life is a journey, not a destination, and as long as you are willing to keep growing, keep learning, keep choosing, and keep opening yourself to what is possible, your abundance will not be a final place you reach, but a path you continue to walk with trust, gratitude, courage, and an open heart.